Would you love to focus on clowning full time, to have it be front and center in your life? Whether that's as a performer, an organizational leader, teacher, or something else that's never been thought of before? If so, today's episode is for you. We're going to talk about the key skills you'll need to create a clown-related business, and I'm going to offer you 3 keys to making your living with clown.
Welcome to the Clown Spirit Podcast. And here's your clowntastic host, Mr. Barnaby King.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast episode, which is one of those where I just get to talk about stuff that I think is interesting, which is mostly clown related. So hopefully it'll work for you. I've been reflecting recently on how lucky I have been in my life to have fallen into this world of clowning and then to have somehow stayed in it for 20 years. It was actually more, 24 years. It was 2001 when I took my first ever clown workshop with Sue Morrison. And since about 2008, I have been earning a living almost entirely from clown-related activities. And as I reflect on that, I'm thinking about what is it that I did that allowed me to do that, to pursue and retain that exclusivity, that focus on clowning, and to really make it my life in a way that has worked for me in terms of my income and lifestyle. I really want to encourage you to think this way, to think about how can you make your life focus and center around clowning. Not only have I been lucky enough to do that, I've learned a lot about business. I've read a lot of books. I really enjoy learning about business and how to run a successful organization. And so I'm going to feed that into the podcast today. Because we need more people who are committed to clowning and who have the skills to bring it full time into their lives. Not just in this narrow way that clowning has been understood as a kind of artisanal craft for centuries, but nowadays in a diverse constellation of ways that it's possible to bring clowning into your life as a daily pursuit, as something that you're committed to in your life. I hope that some of what I present is transferable. It's not just about taking the specific examples that I'm talking about and applying them. It's more about trying to find those common principles and transferable insights that are going to help you to develop your own notion of making a living from clown. And I encourage you to look around and see who else has done this. And that's why I put together a course which is called The Business of Clowning. I'm really excited about this. It's something that I've been planning and thinking about for a really long time, and it's finally about to be birthed. We have 8 different teachers from diverse backgrounds, not all from clowning, but some from entertainment, some from business. But they all have really wonderful and unique insights from different perspectives that I think are going to help you get a clearer sense and a clearer map for how you can put clowning at the center of your life. Towards the end of the podcast, I'll talk a little bit more about this course and the teachers on it. And before we get to the 3 keys to making your living from clown, I just want to give you a brief overview of my own trajectory through clowning to where I am now, because I'm going to be using examples from that later on. Hopefully just help to give you some context. As I said, I started learning about clown in 2001, but I'd already been involved in theatre. And so I had some experience of how to run a theatre company, the admin involved, some bookkeeping and budgeting and tour booking and some basics of that sort, which actually turned out to be really helpful because when I started clowning in 2001, after about a year, I actually started making a show, and pretty soon I had a show and I knew how to book a tour, how to think about budgeting that show and the elements of self-production. For a couple of years, I toured that solo clown show to fringe festivals around the world and different venues. And it was a small scale venue tour. I never went to big venues, but I did do some key important festivals and did the New York Clown Festival and some festivals in South America. And for me, doing that show was enormously important, doing it over and over again and really gaining my chops as a clown performer in front of an audience, repeating material, refining that material. In 2008, I went to Chicago to do a PhD, and my topic was clowning as a transformative social practice in Colombia. So I already had these connections with folks in Colombia, and I was able to use those connections and then go to Colombia to do my field work and study clowns and clowning. And at the same time, I was teaching, I was learning Spanish, and eventually did my show in Spanish in South America. And that was a big stepping stone as well. And it's part of what I'm going to talk about a bit later in terms of the diversification, the ability to have skills and strengths in different areas and bring them together with your clowning. The PhD was huge because what that allowed me to do was then get a job as a professor, as a lecturer, in fact, in a university in the UK. And I was teaching clowning and physical comedy and other things as well. And really, during the PhD and in that 6 years at Edge Hill University was where I really learned how to teach, how to put together a syllabus and a curriculum to structure a learning process. And that has also proven to be vital now as I've moved into a later stage in my career. Another piece of this is that at the same time, in fact, as part of my field work in Colombia, I created this Clown Encuentro, which is a festival of clowning, an annual gathering of clowns in South America. And it was a research exercise, but it also turned into an artistic production experience. I was producing a festival and having to do a lot of communicating with clown artists and teachers, inviting people, figuring out the logistics, marketing, using social media to really market the Clown Encuentro, and then all the logistics of the actual festival itself. And again, those are skills that I've brought very much into what I'm doing now. So those are some pieces there. The clown show itself, the work in Colombia, creating the festival, doing the PhD, working as a professor. When I left my job at Edge Hill in 2019 and went to Colombia to live for a year, and that was when COVID hit, going online was the obvious thing. So there was a little bit of just synchronicity and happenstance there. It was very fortunate. It was just happened at the right moment. I started to do things online and realized that I could teach, and then Clown Spirit just emerged. As I said, bringing together all these other skills and experiences I'd had before into this online space, and suddenly I knew what it was I wanted to do, and this has been it ever since. And I feel like I'm on this wonderful, magical journey with you all, and I don't know exactly where it's going, but I have ideas. And this actually brings me to the first key. The 3 keys to making your living with clown cover 3 levels of thinking when it comes to business. The first level is strategic. The second is tactical. And the third is holistic. Another way to think about this is that the strategic is the why. This really gets at our sense of purpose, why we're here in the first place doing clowning and linking that to visioning. The tactical is the what are we actually doing day to day? What are the skills and specific fields of knowledge that we need to bring to the table? And then the third level, the holistic, this is really, in some ways, the most important one. This is actually the how. I don't just mean how to make a website or how to book a tour. I'm talking about the way in which we do everything. This is a lesson I learned from a great business book called The E-Myth. And in this book, the writer talks about how within a business, we need to be embodying certain principles and values in our day-to-day operations, not just in the product or what we do on a customer-facing side, but what we do internally, how we operate. This is what I mean by the holistic and the how. Because not only does how we operate on the inside actually end up reflecting out to the outside world, but also it's about how we're keeping ourselves whole and nourished internally. Now, with a large organization, that clearly has to do with the culture of the organization, how things are done. But often with clowns, we're one-person organizations. And it's just as important to think of your own internal holistic health, how you're doing things. So I'm going to break this down a little bit more. We're going to start with the strategic, the why. Then we're going to move to the tactical, the what. And then we're going to talk about this holistic element, the how. So let's begin with the strategic. What do I mean by that? Since I was quite young, I have always and often journaled. And in my journals, I capture what I have done, but I also project forwards. And I do that in a very visual way. So I have a blank sheet and I write big words and circles and I join them and I put often my vision or my future or me or something in the middle. And then I have these kind of clusters of ideas and phrases that kind of shoot off of that. Maybe 3, maybe 4. And I try to gather all the ideas and thoughts I'm having around particular concepts or themes and then try to make sense of the whole thing. And it's a wonderful way to just create a map in your brain and in your body of the possibilities that the future might hold. It's a visioning process, and the visual element of it really helps. But also it can really help sometimes for me to go internal and close my eyes and spend some time meditating to think and to see what comes to the surface. And also sometimes to try putting those things into a physical form, into a embodied form, to do a little improv or a little movement piece where I'm expressing where I want to be in 5 years. Simply put, what I'm saying is envision your future. Do regular visioning processes for yourself, whatever that looks like. Open a fresh sheet of blank paper and just put my vision, the vision for my future in the middle, and just start doodling and free writing and see what comes out, and then see if you can join some of those dots and make patterns. Have it be playful and fun and creative. If it works better for you just to write, if you're a verbal person, do that. If it works better for you to improvise physically and capture it on video maybe, or just speak into a microphone and capture your ideas, or get some coaching with myself in the Clown Spirit Village, or with somebody else, a therapist, a coach, a friend, somebody who you can download a lot of thoughts, stream of consciousness, and then they can help by asking the right questions to formulate that into something a little bit more concrete. And I'm talking about the strategic level here. I'm not talking about the tactical yet. I'm not talking about specific things that you need to do or actions. I'm thinking more, okay, these are the big areas, the big ideas that I really want to move towards in my life. For example, for me, some of those big ideas are community. I want to be a host. I want to be a community organizer. I also want to be an inspiring teacher. Being able to teach people technically how to clown is really important for me. I also want space in which to create my own work and work either in solo or ensemble, but in front of an audience. That artistic, creative part of me needs to be there, needs to be acknowledged. And then there's a fourth part, which is to do with financial success and wanting a certain level of economic stability for myself, to feel good about myself, to be able to provide for my children. These are important things. So hopefully you can see these are fields or areas that are important for me. And then I can start to draw dots and connect those things together as I decide on a more tactical level what I'm actually going to do. So that's the strategic. Have not just a plan, but have a vision, a sense of where you want to go. And at the same time, I want to say, don't be surprised when the vision doesn't work out. About 20 some years ago, I remember having this really clear vision that I wanted to have an arts center. I wanted to produce and manage my own physical in-person art center, like a space where people could come and create work and show work, and I would gather and have workshops. And I held that very strong vision for a number of years. Now, life has presented something different to me. But in some ways, it's the same vision. It's just been translated into a different format. I couldn't have envisioned back then the idea of having this online community of Clown Spirit. But in many ways, what I'm doing is a version of what my original vision was, just in a virtual environment that we couldn't have envisioned in 2001. Now, if you envision something today, that might not be possible, or might not be viable, or just might not be what's really going to happen for you. But in 20 years or 10 years, you might find that there's some version of what you envisioned that you have. So don't be surprised if life comes at you, the world, the universe comes at you with some different idea. The thing is to remain open to what's happening and to hold this vision, your intention, and to find the dance between those two things. Not to hold on too tightly to the vision, because it can be frustrating, right? If you create that expectation. Okay, so let's move now to the second key. For me, the second key is the tactical. And here, what I've noticed about myself and the skills that I've maybe some born with and some have developed is that it has to do with persistence, diversification, and finally, communication. So I'm going to just pick up on quickly on each of those. Firstly, persistence. Not giving up is really important. When things don't seem to be going well, just continuing, maybe taking a step back and changing things, but not stopping. It can feel sometimes you're not moving, or you're not moving fast enough towards your goal. And when I have that thought, I just remind myself to use the asset of time. The point is, if you keep doing the same thing, even if in very small increments, but you're doing it every day, after a year, you will have got somewhere. After 10 years, you will have really gotten somewhere, because of the incremental way that time adds value to what you're doing. Just doing a little bit, taking a small step, but continuing to do that, building in the repetition and the routine and the habit. The second thing is diversification. And this has to do with not relying on clowning, just clowning, and the idea that I can just do clowning. Clowning itself is almost like a parasitical thing. Clowns live off other things. They consume, repurpose all kinds of other things from the world, right? Traditionally, it's the circus, and clowns take circus skills and they goof around with them. They fail at them, or sometimes they do them well. But circus skills is a great asset to have as a clown. But now it can be all kinds of other things. For me, music was really important. But also, I'm going to include in there academia and the world of the intellectual world of books and learning. I loved it, and I invested a lot of my time and effort into that, doing a PhD and so on. But it fed my clowning. A lot of my clowning and my clown characters and material have to do with kind of mocking that world and having fun with that world. So it gives me a way into my clowning. Another great example of that is languages. If you have another language, it's a great asset to be able to weave into your clowning. When I started doing my show in Spanish, I found that it had this whole other lease of life. It's transformed, and it really enriched the show in many ways. And when I came back to do it in English, that enrichment, I think, made it better. So business skills is another thing, right? If you can pick up and gain skills, experience, some chops in areas in the arts, but also outside of the arts, it's going to really strengthen your ability to put clowning at the center of your life. Diversification also gives you this way to be smart about how you're actually making a living, how you're finding revenue and income from different sources. You need feet in different camps. Maybe if you're a clown, you have a particular season when you can do festivals, and then there's another season where you can do seasonal parties, and then there's another time when you have to do, I don't know, teaching kids or something, but because of the way the seasons work. So you're going to need all of those skills at different times of year. If you're going to be self-producing, you need a lot of business skills. You probably need to have a good understanding of some elements of managing online platforms to do marketing, to do design, to do video editing. You really need to be multi-skilled and multifaceted to be successful as a clown. And I'm not just talking about being a clown. I'm also talking about maybe you want to be an accountant who brings clowning into your world, or a therapist who brings clowning into your therapy, or whatever it is, a teacher. You're going to need many strings to your bow, many arrows in your quiver. And this brings me to the third element of the tactical. I think there's one particular skill which underlies everything, and that's communication. If you have solid communication skills, that's going to really enhance your ability to put clowning at the center of your life, whatever field or way you're doing that. The ability to persuade, convince, sell, but also the ability to inspire, to listen, to nurture good, positive relationships. I can't think of any type of career or professional life where that's not absolutely important. And it's not something that we're really taught very well, I think, at school. It's something that I've had to develop over a long period of time, and I'm still learning. So that's the tactical, right? Persistence, diversification, and communication. I think if you're putting together the strategic and the tactical, you're really well set. If you're making a vision for yourself and continuing to do that, but then listening to the universe and what that's telling you, and you're being persistent, you're diversifying your skill set, and you're learning how to communicate better, you're really on a winning track. But there's one other area that I think is super important in terms of your personal well-being and happiness. And that's the holistic, which for me includes the spiritual elements of life, which we shouldn't forget about. Staying healthy in the body, in the mind, in the spirit, and most importantly, in your clown. Here, balance, I think, is crucial. If I spend all of my time sitting in front of a computer, which sometimes I feel like I want to in order to run my business, I get frustrated, worn out, burned out. So I have to balance that with clowning itself in the first place. I have to go out and actually interact, be in clown. There's so much nourishment and energy that I get from that. I don't perform that much as I used to anymore because I'm teaching and I'm creating the clown spirit material and managing this platform and so on. But I make sure to be performing enough so that I still get that buzz, that experience of being in front of the audience that's so life-giving and important for me and reminds me why I do this in the first place. So even just yesterday, there was the march on the street in the town where I live. So I called a few friends and I put on my clown costume and we went out and we created spontaneously a beautiful clowny kind of march and improvising with people and the protest. And it brought a lovely energy and it felt like I was performing for them. And it was an act of service. I also love to put together shows. When I can, I get together with an ensemble where we call ourselves the Ship of Fools, and we're based in the UK and some of us in Sweden. And we go to festivals and we perform this physical comedy clowning show. This doesn't really earn me very much money. It's not something that's the center of my career at the moment, but it's essential for my holistic well-being. Another thing that's important for me is to actually have a daily ritual of physical work, meditative work, spiritual connection. So having a workout, making sure that I'm looking after my body, making sure that I'm meditating and having time outside with nature, that I'm having good breaks and time off from the computer screen, that I'm eating. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm definitely not. I'm always working at that. I get out of the routine sometimes. I lose the habit when I go away traveling and come back and so on. So I'm not saying that I have this Zen-like routine, but I notice that how much more balanced, happy, and fulfilled and energized I feel when I have that hour in the morning before I even eat breakfast to play a little bit in my body, to get in touch with the clown, to connect with some energy, maybe take a cold plunge, do some breath work, whatever it is. It's that self-love that's so important. When I'm thinking about nourishing myself holistically, 3 questions: what brings me joy, what excites me, and what relaxes me, right? The excitement is important. I need that excited energy to drive forwards. But I also need sometimes to consciously relax and do things that feel good and nourishing and restful, easeful. And then underneath all of that, what is it that brings me joy, that feeds my inner clown? So thanks for listening. This has been a really helpful process for me to break down, well, what is it I do? And I found it helpful to think about these 3 levels of the strategic, the tactical, and the holistic. The why, the what, and the how. And the specific ways that you all think about those 3 areas might be different. You might have different approaches and questions, but I think that those 3 categories can be a useful starting point. Very soon, I'm going to be releasing a document that I've created that's a kind of a holistic clown visioning document. It's called the Clownpreneur's Compass. And I hope that it will be useful for you. It has some really important questions that are going to help you think about, why are you doing this? What are you really good at? What is it you're already doing? What do you want to do? And what are some steps you can take to move in that direction? All of this, in a way, is preparation and setting the scene for this course that's going to be launching in August. We're in 2025. If you're listening to this down the road and in another time, another year, then this stuff is already going to be available for you in Clown Spirit Village. But right now, I'm putting it together still, and it's launching in August. And I have 8 really exciting sessions. I won't give you the entire rundown, but I'll just give you a few edited highlights. So we have Tad Hargraves leading a session on how to make marketing effective, fun, and ethical. We also have Jeff Raz, the founder of the Clown Conservatory in San Francisco, giving us a session on business basics for clowns. Scott Neary, a fantastic performer and also business coach who helped me a lot with Clown Spirit Village. He's going to do a session on a formula for renown that feels good to practice, and it's going to have you being begged by bookers to go and work for them. We're going to have a session from Shanna Carroll from Seven Fingers Circus. Also, Karen Hall, who is a graduate of the Clown School, who is a very successful musician and physical comedy performer, doing a session on ROIs, that's return on investment, and marketing and budgeting. Martin Sizilski is going to do a really cool session on getting a good mindset around money. We also have sessions on organizing for community impact and other themes as well. And as I mentioned, we're going to have open space integration sessions where we can reflect on what we've learned and students can share with each other what they're learning, what they're putting into practice. This is going to be a course that is free if you're in the Clown Spirit Village. There will also be an option to pay to take the course as a one-off, but Clown Spirit Village members just get it for free. They can come along to all those sessions. So look out in your email inboxes for more information on the Clownpreneur's Compass tool and on the Business of Clowning course that's going to be coming out very soon. It's an exciting new endeavor for us here at Clown Spirit. I know that many of you out there have been asking for this kind of support for a long time, and I'm excited to see the real impact and the real benefits that it brings, to see more of you stepping into that clown space and committing to it as your primary way of making a living. Please subscribe to this podcast, give us some feedback, share it with your friends. It's been wonderful talking to you today. Thanks for being there. And of course, as always, keep clowning.